Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. I don't know about you, but one of the more intriguing aspects of the Civil War is how so many of the officers on opposite sides had been acquaintances and comrades in antebellum times. A number of the cadre of officers served together in the Mexican War 15 years earlier, and there they're able to take the measure of their fighting qualities and their courage. I've come across these relationships in research projects in the past. Today, I found a new one, at least new to me, a relationship that has eluded me in past research. This is Ulysses S. Grant and Raphael Semmes. You students of the Civil War and students of Ulysses S. Grant are very aware, I know you are, of the story of how he placed a howitzer in the belfry of a church at San Cosme during the 1847 Battle of Chapultepec. That was part of the larger Mexican City campaign. This moment of courage, this tactical move by Grant under fire, has been recognized by historians as a reflection of the victorious general and leader he would become during the Civil War. The story is frequently told in various media. Overlooked, I think, is the role of a fellow lieutenant in the same battle who was with him, Raphael Semmes, who, of course, as you know, went on to his own fame as a Confederate raider, as a captain of the Sumter and the Alabama. So I want to give you two snippets that come from primary sources. The first is from Grant's memoirs, published in 1885. In this anecdote, Grant references William J. Worth, who was his commanding officer, and he describes the moment in the lead up to placing that howitzer in the belfry of the church. There's a causeway through which the U.S. troops are moving, and the church provides a great location to place some covering fire. All this is happening while Mexican troops are firing at them. So that's the setup. And now let me give you Grant's story in his own words of how he came to place that howitzer in the steeple. So here we go. Worth's command gradually advanced to the front row, open to it. Later in the day, reconnoitering, I found a church off to the south of the road, which looked to me as if the belfry would command the ground back the Garita San Cosme. That's the San Cosme Gate, which is one of the key strong points that led into one of two gates, actually, that led into Mexico City. I got an officer of the voltigeurs, which is a French term for light infantry. It can also be sharpshooters, with a mountain howitzer and men to work it to go with me. The road, being in possession of the enemy, we had to take the field to the south to reach the church. This took us over several ditches breast deep in water and grown up with water plants. These ditches, however, were not over 8 or 10 feet in width. The howitzer was taken in pieces and carried by the men to its destination. When I knocked for admission to the church, a priest came to the door who, while extremely polite, declined to admit us. Probably not a surprise. With the little Spanish then at my command, I explained to him that he might save property by opening the door, and he certainly would save himself from becoming a prisoner, for a time at least. And besides, I intended to go in whether he consented or not. He began to see his duty in the same light as I did and opened the door, though he did not look as if it gave him special pleasure to do so. The gun was carried to the belfry and put together. We were not more than 200 or 300 yards from San Cosme Gate. The shots from our little gun dropped in upon the enemy and created great confusion. Why they did not send out a small party and capture us, I do not know. We had no infantry or other defenses besides our one gun. The effect of this gun upon the troops about the gate of the city was so marked that General Worth saw it from his position. He, General Worth, was so pleased that he sent a staff officer, a Lieutenant Pemberton, later Lieutenant General commanding the defenses of Vicksburg, there's another connection, to bring me to him. He expressed his gratification at the services of the howitzer in the church steeple was doing, saying that every shot was effective. So there you have Grant's own account of placing the howitzer, a mountain howitzer, as he describes it, taken apart in pieces and brought to the belfry of the San Cosme Church. Now, this accounting made some news at the time. Some generals mentioned it in their reports. Some of those generals and other commanders mentioned Grant by name, others did not. But of course, over time, that story became what it is today, part of what we know of the legend of a young Grant as he was learning the ways, the art of war, and understanding how to conduct himself in battle. Now, I want to take you to one of those early post-Mexican War accounts. This is the account written by Semmes himself. In 1851, he wrote a book called Service Afloat and Ashore during the Mexican War, which was something of a hit, a bestseller for the times. And in it, he makes a reference, of course, at this time, 1851, you're 20 years before the Civil War, 25 years before Grant passes away and his memoirs are published. And of course, by that time, Semmes himself has also passed away. But in 1851, not realizing the importance of the San Cosme story, the howitzer story, and Grant, Semmes writes it like it is and doesn't mention Grant by name because he doesn't really know Grant. So here's Semmes's version. He says, a brigade was at the same time ordered to take the buildings on the left of the road and by the use of bars and picks, burrow through from house to house. So Semmes is setting this up. They're basically looking at hand-to-hand combat in the city or in the suburbs, really, as they're approaching the city. And in like manner, carry the right of the garita. While these orders are being executed, and by the way, I should mention, Semmes was in the Navy, but he's detached on land duty. This is service afloat and on land or ashore. This is the ashore part. While these orders were being executed, while they're getting ready to burrow house to house, a mountain howitzer was placed in the azotea of the church of San Cosme on the right, and another on a commanding building on the left. So here we have Semmes describing Grant's placement of the mountain howitzer in the church on San Cosme, which is on the right of the road. And then he mentions another on a commanding building on the left. The individual who placed that mountain howitzer on the commanding building on the left, opposite Grant's position, is Semmes himself. After the great effect that the howitzer is seen to have had, Semmes is detached with another group to repeat the same activity. So Semmes follows Grant's lead in dragging another howitzer up to a commanding position to help make the battle victorious. And in fact, so it is. And there you have it, one of those unique Mexican War connections that later on manifest itself in the Civil War. Of course, Grant and Semmes are never going to exactly meet up, but there is, of course, the connection that Grant chose the Union, went on to become commander of all of the Union forces, while Semmes resumed his spot in the Navy, of course, moved to the Confederate Navy after Alabama, his adopted home state, seceded And Semmes went on to be the captain of the Sumter and the Alabama, as I mentioned, wreaking havoc on the U.S. merchant fleets around the world. And of course, when he came back to the Confederate States towards the very end of the war, becoming a brigadier general, an appointment that was never confirmed, but given to him by Jefferson Davis, taking over the James River Squadron, and then eventually being surrendered with his sailors by General Joseph E. Johnston to one of Grant's lieutenants, William T. Sherman, in North Carolina in April of 1865. So there you have those interesting and intriguing Civil War connections of the band of brothers who were all comrades before the war. So take care. Thanks for listening.